Hey, welcome to Elevate, the podcast that brings your cutting edge insights on business transformation. I'm your host, Dr. Sandra Wepler, CEO and founder of You Improved, your business transformation partner. I am excited for this launch, and I have a fantastic guest today. In today's episode, we're exploring the topic of neurodiversity as a superpower, leveraging cognitive differences to drive transformative change. So, prepare to gain powerful insights that will not only leave and elevate your business, but also equip your organization to thrive amidst the rapid changes and disruptions that are taking place. Whether you're navigating a major transformation or you're seeking to stay ahead in a dynamic market, our discussion today will provide you with actionable strategies to turn challenges into opportunities. And so, without further ado, I am thrilled to welcome our distinguished guest, Soman Chatterjee, Executive Director and Partner at Neuroleadership Institute of India and South Asia. Let me tell you about Soman. First and foremost, we connected through LinkedIn. Soman was off and on my page, and I was like, I gotta check Soman out. And when I did, I was like, wow, if I'm going to launch Elevate, it's going to have to be with him. So Soman brings 31 years of work experience in the energy, telecom, and technology industry. He has held senior positions in organizations such as IBM, Wipro, and Airtel. He is the founder of Think.Connect, a boutique coaching company, which later entered into a partnership with Neuro Leadership Institute, where he leads the charge as an executive director and partner for the South Asian region, and also the principal consultant of Franklin Covey India. Outside of work interests, he is well-traveled globally, including North America, and he is an avid musician who is currently living in Kolkata. Soman, it's a pleasure to have you on Elevate. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me over, Sandra. Lovely to be here with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we have so much to cover and so exciting that I want to just, dive right in. So, Soman, can you give our viewers, just an overview of the current state of neurodiversity, the awareness, the acceptance, and just to start with, what is neurodiversity?
Yes, I think that's a very good starting point. There are a lot of different views about what this neurodiversity is all about and why is it important. I think that's a good point to get started. So first thing first, brain research has shown that no two human brain works alike. While you can see that the basic construct of a brain can be similar or same in most cases. However, the way it works and functions can be very different. And neurodiversity is a word which has been used to explain this unique ways people's brains work. So that's neurodiversity. Now, being neurodivergent, another word that we use very often, neurodivergent means having a brain that works differently from the average or neurotypical person. So we call, average behaviors as neurotypical. Neurodivergent is when you're not really following the typical way of thinking, behaving, emoting, all of that. So that's the difference between neurodiverse and neurodivergent. And interestingly, I want to tell you that we are talking about brain differences, not brain faults. So being neurodivergent is not a taboo. And you'll be surprised to know that nearly 20% of the global, population actually is neurodivergent.
Wow.
And hold your heart. If you actually got yourself tested, you might find that even you have some neurodivergent, traits which are there which you have not noticed before. So that's what these things mean. Now coming to the question, the big challenge is, of course, awareness and acceptance. It's still a huge challenge. I mean, just imagine 85% of people in the autism spectrum. Autism has got we call it the ASD, the autism spectrum disorder. Okay, and in the 85% of people with ASD in the US alone are unemployed because people do not believe that they fit the neurotypical person. So it is a huge problem. Okay, it's not something which we can wish away. Uh, are people more aware? Yes, people are getting more aware. There's a lot of work happening around neurodiversity. But the challenge is not so much of, it's not just about being aware. The challenge is about acceptance. We all want to stick to what is comfortable with us. I would always like to work with someone who's similar to me. This I'll explain to you as we move along. Is a bias in our brain, which analyze well known across the world. Neuro Leadership Institute's SEEDS model of bias. This is called S for similarity. People like me are better. And this similarity bias prevents us from accepting people who have divergent thinking or neurodivergent behavior. And that's the big challenge today. And whether it's ADHD, whether it's autism, whether it's dyspraxia, dyslexia, the typical neurodivergent behaviors and functioning of the brain, all of them have this challenge that, will I be accepted into the mainstream of work? So that's in a short view of where we are currently today, Sandra.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what are some of the misconceptions? I think you mentioned some, but when you look at it in the context of an organization, I mean, I'm very new to this subject, but I've been doing some research, and I can imagine the complexities that it brings, especially if the company or the organization is going through a business transformation. So let's talk about, a little bit about, the, you know, I guess the synergies and the challenges when a company is going through business transformation. How does this fit in?
Oh yes, I mean, if you were an HR hiring manager, it's a tough route to walk because at one end you've been asked to bring in neurodivergent people. At the other end, you're having your own biases and your own misconceptions, and therefore, sometimes accepting all of that and sort of and going above them can be a big challenge in organizations. First myth that I want to sort of bring about here is that neurodiversity seems like a nice word for mental illness. The whole world believes that if you're neurodivergent, it's some kind of a illness, but it's being said in a nicer manner. Well, that's completely untrue because neurodivergent people can lead very normal and very successful lives. And it's not an illness at all. As I told you earlier, that these are brain variances, not faults. Different brains have different ways of behaving.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Uh, Take dyslexia. Dyslexic person works in spikes. Okay, you and me, assuming we are neurotypical, I'm not sure. Okay, we work in lesser spikes, which means we are reasonably good with reading, we are reasonably good with speaking, we're quite good in sort of creative thinking. But a dyslexic person may be very poor in reading skills, but may have fantastic creativity. Pattern recognition, it has been seen over and over again. People with autism or with dyslexia can actually recognize patterns, and hence they can actually predict a lot of stuff that a normal person like you and me will not be able to even see through. The first myth is that it's not an illness at all. Okay. The second myth, which especially seen in organizations, is that they're kind of clubbed together with things like PWDs. Neurodiversity is confused with disabilities, and honestly, there is no disability here. It's just the way a brain has been wired. It's wired differently to think differently, and hence it's not a disability at all. But then the whole mainstream processes inside an organization tends to treat them in that manner. Therefore, they have to sort of walk the same path as a disabled person, my person with who will be challenged have to walk through.
Mhm.
The third, and this is very interesting, a lot of surveys have shown that people believe that neurodivergent people need disability support. Because the bias here is that anyway they can't lead independent lives because their thinking is all haywire, and they see things where others can't see, therefore they need support. Completely untrue. I mean, the example that comes to my mind as I speak to you is about Sir Richard Branson. He has openly talked about his dyslexia problem, and he attributes his success to his ability to actually think way beyond in a manner that none of the people other people could do. So you can see that people can be very successful, can lead completely independent lives. And the fourth challenge, if I may say, is neurodiversity is all clubbed into one. That's a big myth that everybody with neurodiversity has basically the same needs and problems. They all face the same challenge. Not true at all. ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, all of them have different outcomes or different behavioral outputs, and they have to be tackled differently. So that's some of the myths. Now, all I want to tell you here is that the neurodiversity movement that's happening in the last couple of years, wants to change the narrative from one of illness to one in which neurological differences are accepted and celebrated. This
Yes.
is very important. We don't want to, club it as an illness anymore, but it's something that we need. And how, we will talk about it.
Mhm. Yeah, so just leading into that question. So when you think about, HR managers and people that are recruiting, and let's say that, there is a situation like around the pandemic, for example, there was, the country was in crisis, the nation was in crisis, healthcare was in crisis, companies were in crisis at the time. What would be, just leading into your question, what would be something that companies can do to, build this awareness and also to integrate, people with neurodiversity into, and not only just integrate them into the company, but also, support that awareness and that change that narrative and educate people, in the organization.
Well, there is in the US and many other parts of the world, there's a lot of work that's happening around integration of neurodiversity, into the workplace. The companies like Microsoft, Deloitte, PwC, these are some of the names, big names, and of course that work has gone across the shores. Now, for example, the country where I belong, India, there's a lot of work that's happening around you know specific hiring of neurodiversity into the workplace. So there is work that is happening, but some of the initiatives obviously are the first step is awareness. Okay, making people aware that neurodiversity is not some illness. It's just that some people are that way, and often, the biggest, in my belief, the biggest challenge is actually self-awareness. Are
Mhm.
we even aware whether we are neurodivergent or not? Have we, people who have autism, what's the easiest way to figure out whether a person has autism? People with autistic spectrum disorders will not look you into the eye and speak to you. They will always look somewhere else. And there are telltale signs of people having these mental differences, brain differences. Now that doesn't make them ill or doesn't make them somebody who can't be brought into the mainstream. So the first step is awareness. A lot of work is happening around awareness. But as we have learned that awareness, our Neuro Leadership Institute's world famous experiments on bias has shown us that awareness does little to break bias. You can be very aware of a problem, but you can't wish it away because bias is a part of your brain's internal process of decision making. So you have to do other things to break bias. And of course, we are at the forefront of that work. So NLI does a lot of work with organizations across the world in helping them, take the step towards breaking bias, not just the awareness way, but in other ways. The other thing is, organizations are trying to normalize the situation by talking it out. Allowing people to express, their concerns about having neurodivergent people into their teams, and so that things get normalized, things come out in the fore, and we can do something about it. The most important part is a lot of work is happening around redesigning the hiring process. Now, it's pretty obvious to you and me that people who are affected in a neurodivergent way often struggle to fit the profiles sought by prospective employers.
Okay.
So if you are a prospective employer and you've got a cookie cutter profile that you're looking for, most people who are neurodivergent may not fit that role, and hence this large unemployment that looms at us across the world. And that's where a lot of work has begun to happen, where specific roles, where you need unique set of skills, roles where you need high creativity, where you need pattern identification, where you need lateral thinking. You want to bring in someone who's wearing the hat of dissent. We call it the hat of dissent. Somebody who's got a completely different perspective to what is being discussed today. If you bring in such people, the best fit are neurodivergent thinkers, and therefore the way we hire and what we hire for both need to be relooked at by organizations. A lot of work is happening in this area. I'm sure with AI coming in, a lot more flexibilities and lot more analysis is happening. But yeah, fundamentally, we have to look at them differently because to fit them in a different place. Now, the other thing that a lot of organizations are doing is also about what is called buddy processes, which means it's very, we all know about buddy processes in organizations, but buddies for neurodivergent, you know, uh, population is very important because these people may not behave like your neurotypical people. They may have difficulties in eating, or they may have difficulties in making a presentation, but they may be brilliant in their thinking. So you need people to buddy up with them so that they can feel comfortable and relax, and that they feel accepted and included. We keep talking about inclusion all the time, but it's not easy. Our biases prevent us from inclusion. But are we giving out the right social signals to these people so that they feel included in the workplace? They feel belonged in the workplace. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening. The other important thing, and this is especially for in the US, is a lot of work has also begun to happen about building awareness about legal obligations against discrimination. You can inadvertently discriminate in the workplace without even your knowledge, and that actually goes against the Equality Act 2010, and therefore some awareness about how not to behave in a manner that you infringe on legal obligations of neurodivergent people. That's another area that's happening in the workplace. Sandra?
Right. So, in terms of, you use a very specific word, you said social signaling. And I think when we talked at some point, we also talked about, the way, I would say social EQ or social intelligence. We touched on that. And so I'd just like to find out a little bit more. I'm sure the listeners would find that part of it interesting as well. So if you can maybe talk a little bit about social signaling and social intelligence, that would be great too. Yeah.
Thank you. That I think it's a very important aspect, and something that was literally, Neuro Leadership Institute's research came through in 2009, way back, and then in 2012 it was reframed again. Fundamentally, all our behaviors are rooted in a brain phenomena which is called the threat or reward response. At any given time, we are receiving stimulus from externals. This external stimuli, which either puts our brain in a threat state, which means it wants to run away from a danger, or it feels rewarded and valued and wants to move towards something which is valuable to them. this peculiar phenomenon of the brain, these triggers of threat are no more the tigers and the snakes in the jungle.
Mhm.
We've gone past that millions of years. But the primordial brain, the reptilian brain, still remains inside our head, which is so interesting. I mean, the rest of the brain grew almost a million, 100,000 years later. So our basic instinct for survival still remains so strong that social signals. So, for example, you're walking to for lunch, and I pick up the phone and say, Sandra, once you finish your lunch, I'd like to discuss with you. Can I see you in my office? I didn't say why I want to see you in
Yeah,
office. Net result, your
exactly.
lunch is gone for a toss because you're
Yes.
wondering why the hell does
Yeah.
he want to
What
see me?
trouble have I got into?
Exactly. So simple things, simple behaviors can create threat in the brain. And when the brain gets into the threat state, it actually stops thinking because it wants to survive. It wants to, you've heard of the famous F's, the freeze, flight,
Yes.
and fight response, right? So the brain really is trying to figure out what do I do now? So it can't really think clearly. It can't find solutions. It's not perceptible. Cannot collaborate with other people. The intelligence to know how we are putting people in a threat state and what can we do to help them come towards a value or a reward state is what we call social intelligence. And today, in my view, every leader must learn the science behind social intelligence and how they can actually impact. So
Yeah.
that's in a nutshell, and this is a very famous model. You can read it out. Analyze a model called SCARF, which talks about 5 social domains which trigger threat or reward: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness.
Yes. Yeah. Anything that is, I don't think that this is something that has not been around. I think we have heard of this, of neurodiversity. I felt like it was important to bring this to light, especially, to bring awareness, and also to try to figure out like when times are tough, like if there's a pandemic or a crisis, or companies are going through business transformation, you know, certainly these people should not be excluded because definitely, they're going to bring so much value and diversity and their talents and skills, I just wanted to wrap this up today, but any other further thoughts on neurodiversity and how perhaps it lends to, business transformation, on a greater scale?
Sandra, since you've used the word business transformation, in my view, there are just simple 4 things that are required for any business to transform, right? The first is resilience, your ability to see change as an opportunity and not as a threat. The second is the ability to think differently. You've got to be thinking different. You can't be thinking the same thing to achieve a different result, right? Third is to spot breakthrough ideas. There are thousands of ideas that are coming through every day. How do you spot the one which is going to really make a difference? And the ability to think ahead of the curve. You're not thinking today, you're thinking 3 years or 4 years hence. If you look at all these four, perspectives of transformative power, I mean, isn't it staring at our face that neurodivergent people actually uh, are already known to bring lateral perspectives and creative thinking into the table? So I believe that we should look at this very powerful you know power that I think has been given to us, to mankind, and we should use this opportunity and use them to actually transform, because for transformation, uh, what we do every day, the same person will never be able to think of a breakthrough idea because they're so sunk in their day-to-day work. So
Mhm.
that's where I think the real focus should be, and that's where we will actually see the benefit of bringing in including neurodivergent people into the workplace. So that's all I wanted to bring as a perspective.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like what you said about, the breakthrough ideas and keeping an open mind. I think that's going to shut down biases. And I think people have to realize their own biases first, as you've mentioned, and then they can move ahead to the next level. And so I'm sure there's a lot of work to be done in this area, but certainly, Neuro Leadership Institute in Asia and across probably North America and other champions like yourself are really doing that work to bring forth, that awareness. So, Soman, it's amazing, how fast time goes when, when you're speaking and you're, just getting into the, gold nuggets of, the guest and everything that, we've talked about today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today, your insights on neurodiversity as a superpower. And I said superpower because it is a superpower, and we should be looking at it as a superpower. And leveraging cognitive differences to drive transformative change is so valuable to our listeners. And I just want to thank you again for being the guest on our show, Elevate. Really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, Sandra. The topic is very close to my heart, and
Yes.
and we do a lot of work around this. So thank you so much for having me over.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our listeners, you can connect with Soman at www.neuroleadership.com or directly at soman@neuroleadership.co.in. So please feel free to reach out to him with any questions or if you need any further insights. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to talk to you. So, and please don't forget to subscribe to Elevate for more transformative business insights. Go also to our YouTube page. The link is down below. And to learn more about You Improved, go to www.youimproved.ca. Or alternatively, you can book a 30-minute free discovery call with me on LinkedIn. Our next episode will be featuring shortly, so stay tuned. Until next time, keep elevating your business. I'm your host, Dr. Sandra Wepler. Bye for now.
Thank you.